Good Lord. Now Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are plotting to take Buckingham Palace. Surely we're not going to allow that to happen. Of course, the major news overnight that King Charles and Queen Camilla have confirmed that they will never live at the palace. Neither will Prince William and Catherine. So that is a historic moment. A Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network. This cannot happen. Please, God. It almost, Brittany, can I just say here, sorry, I'm so mad about it. I don't even care about the practicalities. I know there is a suite of apartments at Buckingham Palace and it would maybe be the most convenient place, but just no.
I mean, it's just such an awful idea, Dan.
Yes.
And we know that I think Zara and Mike now, have some sort of apartments in Buckingham Palace. I think Mike mentioned that recently. And it does make sense. Obviously, there are apartments there. The Edinburghs live there, as far as I'm aware, when they're in London. And so obviously it is a residence for some royals. But I think stepping away from Buckingham Palace and somehow putting Harry and Meghan in just seems like a really, really dumb idea because it fuels their delusions of grandeur. It, again, confuses the public as to where Harry and Meghan stand. I just don't quite understand where Charles is on this. Obviously, we can all understand from a human perspective, he wants to reconcile with his son. He wants to see his grandchildren. That is very human, but at the same time, he has to think of the institution, and he just doesn't seem to be doing that. And it's just an absolute disaster and mess. And I think shows that I don't know if Charles is necessarily the leader of the moment here. I just don't think he's making good decisions when it comes to what the future of the monarchy should look like.
King Charles just made one of the most significant decisions in modern royal history. He and Camilla will never live at Buckingham Palace. Neither will William and Catherine. The building that has been the operational home of the British monarch since Queen Victoria moved in during 1837, the most recognizable royal address on the planet, will no longer be anyone's actual residence. That announcement landed like a bombshell, and within hours of it dropping, a second story attached itself to the first one and changed everything about how the announcement was being received. Harry and Meghan are reportedly planning to visit the UK next month. There are apartments at Buckingham Palace, and sources are now raising the possibility that the couple who spent years telling the world they needed to escape the monarchy, who said they could not safely return to Britain, may end up being offered access to the very building that no other Windsor wants to live in. As one commentator put it, "You could not make it up." The two members of the royal family most publicly associated with wanting to escape the institution would become the only royals actually living at Buckingham Palace. The building no Windsor wants to call home would become the London base of the two people many Windsors would prefer not to see at all. Welcome to the Marquee Report. Let's go through exactly what happened and why the timing of all of this is not a coincidence. Let's start with the actual decision, because it is genuinely historic and deserves to be understood properly before we get to the Harry and Meghan angle. King Charles and Camilla will continue using Clarence House as their London home. William and Catherine will continue operating from their existing residence. Buckingham Palace, after a £369 million taxpayer-funded refit, will become something new, a ceremonial and operational headquarters, rather than a royal home. The Keeper of the Privy Purse confirmed it formally. After careful consideration and to greatly increase opportunities for public access, the King and Queen have decided not to adopt Buckingham Palace as a personal residence. They will, however, have access to private rooms within the palace during the working day. Palace aides were quick to stress that Buckingham Palace remains what they are calling Monarchy HQ. State visits, garden parties, investitures, audiences, and major receptions will all still happen there. The sovereign standard will still fly from the roof whenever the king is in London. It will continue as the primary workplace of the royal household. But nobody lives there. For the first time since Queen Victoria, the most famous address in the British monarchy is a workplace, not a home. The £369 million refit was originally understood to be at least partly motivated by the prospect of the monarch eventually moving in. That assumption has now been formally set aside. The money has been spent. The building will open to significantly more public access. And the question of who occupies the residential apartments that do exist within the palace complex, has suddenly become very interesting indeed. Here is where the story takes the turn that has sent royal commentators into near panic. Harry and Meghan are expected to visit the UK next month, connected to Invictus Games promotional activities ahead of the Birmingham 2027 event. That much is confirmed. What is not confirmed, but is now being actively discussed and reported, is where they will stay during that visit. Tom Sykes of the Daily Beast's Royalist column was among the first to name the unthinkable. He wrote that with Buckingham Palace still formally categorized as a residential property, giving Harry and Meghan an apartment there becomes an interesting addendum to some very careful wordsmithing from the palace. If it comes to pass that Harry and Meghan get semi-permanent access to an apartment at Buckingham Palace, the irony would be extraordinary. The two members of the royal family most publicly associated with wanting to escape the institution would become the only royals actually living there. One royal commentator's reaction captured the mood perfectly. It's just such an awful idea, and I think it fuels their delusions of grandeur. It confuses the public as to where Harry and Meghan stand. I just don't quite understand where Charles is on this. The concern being expressed is not primarily about the practical logistics of two people using an apartment during a visit. The concern is about what it signals, about the image it creates, about who appears to be driving the narrative and who appears to be reacting to it. Because here is the thing nobody is saying politely enough. Harry and Meghan spent years telling the world they were terrified to return to Britain without government-funded security. And now, apparently, Buckingham Palace is being floated as a potential London base. Here is what palace insiders are actually briefing, and it is significantly more nuanced than the headlines suggest. Rebecca English of the Daily Mail, a journalist who receives information directly from Buckingham Palace communications, provided the clearest picture of where Charles actually stands. The king is a caring Christian man. While he is wary about his son's behavior, he will not pass up the opportunity to see his grandchildren. A September meeting set the precedent for that. But royal watchers should not mistake his willingness to see Archie and Lilibet for weakness. Charles and Camilla have both been deeply hurt by the repeated public attacks in recent years. Those are not easily forgotten, and there are people in the family who will never forgive the betrayal of private information. The palace is watching the Sussex communications operation very carefully. But here is the new line that palace insiders are now pushing. The king is acutely aware that his two youngest grandchildren are not the instigators of the hostility and manipulation. They are innocents caught up in a very sad and bitter family rift. Charles wants them to have the opportunity to know their grandfather and to have some connection to their royal heritage, regardless of what their parents have done. That is a sophisticated communications shift. The palace is no longer framing a potential meeting as any kind of reconciliation with Harry. They are framing it as protecting the long-term interests of two children who did not choose any of this. It is harder to criticize. It is harder for Harry and Meghan to weaponize. And it puts the focus where the palace wants it, on the children rather than on the adults who have been generating the headlines. Here is the detail that every Sussex supporter and every Sussex critic needs to understand, because it defines the actual future. While Charles is managing his relationship with Harry through a careful humanitarian framing centered on the grandchildren, William has made his position clear and has not moved. Richard Eden of the Daily Mail provided the most specific reporting on this. He quoted a friend of William and Catherine directly. William made clear some time ago that he did not want anything to do with his brother, and that has not changed. The friend added, I doubt anyone knows what his views are on his father seeing Harry and Meghan because he does not talk about it. William is not talking about it. He is not reacting to every twist in the Sussex media operation. He is not issuing statements or briefing counter-narratives on a weekly basis. He has drawn his line, and he is letting Charles handle the family dimension while he focuses on the institutional future. And here is why that matters, fundamentally for Harry and Meghan's long-term position. Charles's reign may not be long. William is the future. All questions about titles, about what happens to Archie and Lilibet's royal connections, about whether any meaningful relationship with the British institution is possible, ultimately those questions will be answered by William. Making inroads with Charles, while William remains immovable, is essentially managing the present while ignoring the future. The person they actually need to reach is the one who has most clearly and most consistently refused to engage. Now let's talk about the financial details that were released alongside the Buckingham Palace announcement, because the timing appears deliberate. King Charles personally paid £12.9 million in tax in the 2024-2025 tax year. He has voluntarily paid more than £30 million since coming to the throne. This is the first time he has published his personal tax bill. Prince William, who did not initially want to publish his own figures, paid £7.7 million in personal income tax. He also charged his father more than £500,000 in rent for continued use of Highgrove, which William now owns through the Duchy of Cornwall. The more significant and potentially controversial figure is the sovereign grant. The core public funding of the monarchy is increasing to £100 million per year, nearly doubling in the space of 3 years. The justification given is a backlog in maintenance at occupied royal palaces, cybersecurity upgrades, and energy-efficient heating systems. Palace aides insist this does not represent a blank check, and that the monarchy offers good value for money. Funding will remain flat for the next 5 years after this increase. The timing of the Buckingham Palace announcement alongside these financial figures appears calculated. Royal observers noted that releasing the historic news about Charles not moving into the palace on the same evening as the financial figures, ensuring the residence story dominated front pages rather than the funding increase, has the hallmarks of careful news management. Here is where everything is heading, and why the next few weeks in the UK are going to be closely watched by everyone following this story. Harry is expected in the UK next month. Whether Meghan accompanies him and whether they bring the children remains unconfirmed. The security arrangement has not been formally resolved, despite headlines suggesting it has. Harry's own spokesperson confirmed. As far as they were aware, nothing had changed. A case-by-case security assessment will apply to this visit, as it does to every visit. Charles will apparently see Harry. Palace insiders are clear that this is not a warm reconciliation. It is a carefully managed encounter, driven primarily by the desire to give Archie and Lilibet some connection to their grandfather. The meeting will be short, controlled, watched very carefully by everyone connected to the palace. William will not be involved. He does not talk about Harry. He has not changed his position. He is focused on the institutional future and on his family. Harry and Meghan remain outside the circle he operates in, and somewhere in the background, the question of Buckingham Palace apartments sits unresolved, unlikely to actually happen based on every piece of logic available, but not officially ruled out either, which means it will continue generating exactly the kind of headlines the Sussex operation appears to thrive on. Here is where everything stands as of today. Buckingham Palace will never be Charles's home. It will never be William's home. It will be the ceremonial headquarters of the monarchy, open to significantly more public access, funded by a £369 million refit that the taxpayer has now been told will not result in anyone actually living there. Harry and Meghan are coming to the UK. A meeting with Charles appears likely. A meeting with William appears impossible. The security situation remains technically unresolved, despite confident headlines. The possibility of Buckingham Palace access has been raised publicly and not formally denied, and William, whose opinion matters most about every single aspect of what the Sussex's future looks like, is not talking about any of it. He has drawn his line. He has moved on. He is focused on the institution he is preparing to lead. That clarity from William is the most significant detail in this entire story. Not the Buckingham Palace apartments, not the Charles meeting, not the security headlines. The future king has decided where the lines are. And Harry and Meghan's relationship with the British monarchy will ultimately be defined by whether William ever moves those lines. Based on everything visible right now, he will not. This has been the Marquee Report. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next. See you on the next one.